Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Helotes City Council. It's May 24th, 2018, and we're underway at 7 p.m. Before we start on the agenda, I would like to welcome our newest council member down here at the end, Jim Meadows. He's in place 1. He's up here on the dais because he elected to take the oath of office back on May 11th. So he officially entered into the office at that time, and that's why he's up here. We will be doing a second oath of office just as a ceremonial function here at City Hall during the meeting. That being, and welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. First up on the agenda is the invocation. Tonight, Councilmember Buys will be handling the invocation, and then we'll follow that with the pledges to the American and Texas flags. So if you would please stand for the invocation and pledges.
Let us give thanks for all the blessings, opportunities, and challenges you have given us. Guide us with your strength and wisdom so we can make the right decisions for all the citizens of Helotes. To our 3 newly elected council members, congratulations. Thanks for stepping up to serve your community. Memorial Day is Monday. Let us remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice for the freedoms and quality of life we enjoy every day. Also, our condolences and prayers go out to the family and friends of the Santa Fe school shooting victims. Please keep our first responders, not only here, but all over the country, safe while they perform their unselfish duties. For those that are not able to be with their family and loved ones because of military service, we pray for your quick and safe return. May we give our best always and be assured of your presence with us. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, next up we have the oath of office, and we will start with Jim Meadows, place 1. So Jim, if you want to, let's go right down here in front. Keep that hand, Mike. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome, sir.
We'll take this one bite at a time. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I, Jim Meadows, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Council Member, Place 2, City of Helotes. Place 1. City of Helotes. Of the state of Texas. And will, to the best of my ability. Preserve, protect, and defend. The Constitution and laws of the United States. And of this state. So help me God. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I didn't want to put you in the wrong place.
Others might object.
And I practiced that too. Certificate here. Dave, you want to take some pictures? Marcia? Congratulations.
Thank you.
They done? Got it? There's your certificate?
May I keep it this time?
Sure.
Okay.
Before I get confused again.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you.
Alex? Alex was unopposed. He's been in place 2 for how many years?
7.
7 years. He's a terrific asset to the city council, and he always has great discussion ideas, and we're always glad to have him. So congratulations. So here we go. Raise your right hand. In the name
In the name
and by the authority
and by the authority
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
I, Alexander E. Blue,
I, Alexander E. Blue,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of Council Member Place 2, City of Helotes,
of the office of Council Member, Place 2, City of Helotes,
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Practice time.
Yeah, I did. Got it? Here's yours. And just so you'll know, Cynthia Massey was also re-elected. She was unopposed in place 4, and she took her oath of office on May 11th also because she couldn't be here tonight. So we congratulate Cynthia Massey. She's been on council for 10 years. Okay, next up on the agenda, we have our open session, citizens to be heard. This is the part of the agenda where citizens, whether they're in the city of Helotes or the ETJ, can come up and take 3 minutes to talk about whatever they would like to talk about that's going on in the city. The council cannot enter into a discussion at this phase, but we're always wanting to hear what citizens have to say. We do have one person tonight that signed up to speak. That's Nancy Smith. Nancy, if you would, give your name, address, and who you represent, whether you're a citizen or you're representing an organization, and then you have 3 minutes to
Nancy Smith, I live at 10558 Rockingham Trail, Helotes Park Estates for 48 years, and I'm representing the Casa Helotes. I know that you're all going to be working on the sign and banner ordinance, and I would like to bring up a few things I'd like you to take into consideration. The Casa Helotes is totally self-supporting except for money we get for food. We provide a hot meal 5 days a week for some of our people who don't ever get a hot meal during the day. We have 5 payrolls. Our expenses last month were like $10,000, and our income was $9,000. We only earn money because we advertise, and now we're doing the food trucks, and they're bringing in $500 to $1,000 for us. Our utility bill in April was $988. Can you imagine what it's going to be in July and August? Not only that, I want you to know what our seniors do. And I'm going to read this because 3 minutes are quick. Our quilting group has made over 700 quilts that they've donated to pediatrics at University and at Christus Santa Rosa. And our liaison lady said she was going in one day, a little girl was being discharged in a wheelchair, had this quilt up to her face, and our label was on it. We collect, every year we do lap blankets for the Fisher House at Fort Sam Houston for the boys who go in wheelchairs to the Intrepid for therapy. And for the Fisher House where families stay. They also needed bowls and cups this time. We gave them 110, and we gave them 4 flatware sets and 125 in cash. There's a nun, Sister Mary Teresa Frist, who calls us routinely to do memory boxes. She's with Pediatric Hospice. Can you imagine anything as difficult? And we buy boxes, and our seniors, again, donated to this. They donated $110. We were at Hobby Lobby getting boxes, and some lady asked us what we were doing with them. When I told her, she gave us a $20 bill. A perfect stranger. And they come, and the mothers use these boxes that are decorated to keep little mementos of their children who die. We adopted a family at Coons Elementary School. Ruth Hurd was a counselor, and she said that they had somebody who needed stuff. Again, we hit up our seniors, and we took $500 over to them. We just do a lot of things above and beyond. We help with the recycle program at Coons. We had a lady turn 100. She taught 5th grade. The 5th grade class came over. They brought her 100 cards. We made them cookies. They interacted with all the seniors and said, this place is so fun, just to show them that, you know, seniors and 5th graders can get along this way. But again, we have to earn all of our money. We get no support from you. The only money we get is from ACOG for our food program, and that's it. And everything else we earn, and I'm getting a little old for this. I'm one of the middle-aged ones, and I'll be 83. We will be working again, selling turkey leg boots this Monday. Every time we have an opportunity to earn money, we do that. So, you know, I know you have certain things that need to go on the ordinance and so on, but please, if you can't help us, don't thwart our efforts to help ourselves, because we just, you know, we have so many seniors there who, and I want to tell you that we don't sit and look at each other and just kind of drool. And now, probably in some senior centers, I know if a man comes in and he's unattached and he doesn't drool at lunch, he's fair game. But we don't do this.
Thank you, Nancy. Your 3 minutes has passed.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Next up, we have our consent agenda. For those of you who are not familiar with this type of meeting, a consent agenda is a grouping together of multiple agenda items that the staff and I feel are fairly routine city business. And the objective is to have the council hopefully agree with us and with one motion and 1 second approve these multiple items. However, if a council member has a question about one of the items or more, and we can answer it fairly quickly, we'll do that. Otherwise, they can choose to pull an item, and that item will be dropped down into the rest of the agenda with the individual items and discussed on its own. Tonight, our consent agenda items are 4 through 6. So I would ask council if there are any questions on items 4 through 6 or a request to pull any of the items. Anything? Then I would ask for a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 4 through 6.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve consent agenda items 4 through 6 as written.
We have a motion from Fredericks. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Blue. So no discussion being required. We'll call the question. All in favor of approving consent agenda items 4 through 6, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Items 4 through 6 are approved. That takes us to item number 7. Tonight, this is a discussion of an action on an agreement between Kenneth and Mary Sue Dempsey, the Bluffs at Old Town Helotes LLC and the City of Helotes for the shared joint use of property identified as 14391 Riggs Road, Bluffs at Old Town Helotes, and for different functions, but primarily for our marketplace in Old Town, the first Saturday of each month. So if I can have a motion and a second to discuss and take action on this item, please.
Mayor, I make a motion to discuss and take action on 7.
We have a motion from Buys. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Fredericks. Bert, it's your motion.
Okay, I just have a quick question about one of the paragraphs in the agenda item request form. I understand the request, but the part I don't understand is the request follows the litigation about the golf cart accident that happened in Old Town. What does this do to help that situation?
Well, there's no telling. But the objective, the request that Ken Dempsey had was that this would, if something happened during one of the city events, that it would alleviate him from being named in a lawsuit There's no guarantee, however, that that would happen, but this is just something that he requested. It seemed like a reasonable request, since we don't have an agreement to use his property, and so this is just one step toward that.
Okay, do you feel like we should possibly run this through our city attorney?
It's been run through our
Oh, it
attorney
has?
and through TML.
Oh, okay, okay. So, once again, it just depends. Okay, that's all I have.
You cannot predict what somebody's gonna
Right.
do when it comes to a lawsuit.
Yes, sir.
Paul?
The question I had was, I guess if we're operating, I guess our volunteers and our employees are typically the ones setting this up, and does that cover, whose equipment are we using? Are we using our equipment, or is it his equipment that the employees of the city of Helotes will be using?
The actual equipment, we do use our Bobcat, we use our trucks and trailers. It's 99% ours.
Okay, what about the golf carts? I know they kind of
Those are ours.
Okay,
Now, we do use his for the trolley, or the shuttle,
okay.
out on Riggs Road and Old Bandera Road, but actually setting everything up there are carts.
Oh, those are, okay. And are, most of those people are volunteers, or are they employees of City of Helotes?
They're special events assistants, so they're
They're paid by the city?
employees, yeah.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anything else?
Yeah, thank you.
Jim?
Just one quick question. The indemnification, then, it's up to the limits of our insurance. Is that what we're indemnifying for?
Yes.
That's it?
Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand all of the background, and I don't, to answer your question, it won't have any effect on past because the date would not apply. But the only question, I think you've answered this question, is are we able to extend the TML coverage without getting their response to saying it's okay in writing? Because we are essentially providing some guarantee to the other party that they are going to be defended by TML. So we have something in writing from TML saying that they are willing to allow us to extend that to
Yes, we already,
unknown type of activities other than the specific setup.
right, we already have that.
Then that was my only question. Thank you.
Bert, any follow-up?
No.
Paul?
No, sir.
Jim?
No.
Anything? Nothing? Okay, then we'll call the question on this item, and again, a yes vote or an aye vote is to approve the agreement between Kenneth and Mary Sue Dempsey, the Bluffs at Old Town Helotes LLC, and the City of Helotes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 8 is discussion and action on authorizing the mayor to certify a petition for voluntary annexation and on setting public hearings on an ordinance of the City of Helotes for economic development and city annexation of some additional properties out at Bryce Wood off of Gulm Road. So if I can have a motion and a
I
second.
would just put forward the motion for discussion and action on the authorizing the mayor to certify the petition.
We have a motion from Meadows. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Buys. Jim, it's your motion, so
Aye.
you're up first.
I had only one comment. Being the new guy, or new person on council, I drove out by there in the last couple of days, and I just would like to put into the record to say that the developer in this case has gone beyond the minimums by putting up a block wall instead of a wooden fence and having very well landscaped median areas. So I think that that's just something that, it's the kind of thing we would like when we're annexing property, so it was very well done, in my opinion.
Great, I'm sure he'll appreciate those words. Anything else?
No.
Bert?
Okay, I'm all for this myself, especially with the way the annexation climate that our legislature has enacted for us. To me, this is going to be one of the few ways that we'll be able to annex anything in our ETJ, and I'm all for this. Hopefully, we can get the whole thing submitted right and get it annexed.
Okay, and again, just for clarity, for those of you who aren't familiar with this, 2 years ago, I guess it was, we annexed units 1 and 2, and on their 3 and 5, those particular pieces of property with planned volume of homes that around 550 homes when it's all complete, and they've since purchased those highlighted 2 areas, a 30-acre tract and I think it's a 27-acre tract. and there's going to be 350 homes in there. And as Jim says, it's turned out to be a very nice development. They're doing very well. And what this 380 agreement will be, and the 380 agreement's really not on the agenda. It's just supplied as this part of the agenda item, but what's here tonight is just authorizing proceeding with the annexation process and to set the dates for the 2 hearings that have to be done. But it's going to be a great asset to the city in the future. Okay, Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in complete agreement. I think this is the right thing for the city and the citizens that reside in those areas. I think it allows them to become a part of the city, and in the long run, I think that's in their best interest as well as ours. And I look forward to making sure that the 380 agreement that we eventually will approve on this is worded in the same fashion as the other sections we've already done.
Yeah, it is.
Yep. Thank you.
Paul?
No, I'm in agreement. I think this is good. It's just an extension of what we've done before with this group, so, I'm all for it.
Okay, and they have told us they're negotiating for that middle 34-acre tract, but they don't have a deal on it yet. So it's possible they'll come back with a future annexation for that particular parcel. Jim, any follow-up?
No, sir.
Bert? Alex? None? Okay, no further discussion. We'll call the question. All in favor of proceeding with the petition for voluntary annexation and setting the 2 public hearing dates, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. That takes us to item number 9, which is discussion and direction. There's no motion or second required here since it's not an action item. It's strictly discussion and giving staff direction on working on the sign ordinance. We've been working on the sign ordinance for quite some time, since early last year or maybe even before, but really in earnest. Went to the planning and zoning really and got some discussion in September of last year, and then we've been reworking it. But some sections of our sign ordinance are so difficult to understand for not only the citizens but even our staff, and there's a lot of it's difficult for our staff to explain some of this to the people that are coming in and applying for different variances and other things. So what I'm hoping to do is present this first section on banners to the council for some direction and some ideas, so that we can take it section by section for the most difficult sections for our staff to work with. So that's the intent here. So we'll start the discussion. How about you, Paul? Any thoughts on this?
So I know there was the term special event and recurring event. I had come up with some days, but then I read your recommendations that you get rid of that altogether. Because I know that was an issue trying to define what's a special event, what is a recurring event. So I think I'm in agreement that if we got rid of that language, it would be much easier to enforce. A couple of other things, and maybe does this apply to multi-tenant developments also? Say across the street where the CVS is, if they wanted to put up a banner and then a new restaurant wanted to put up, they could each put up a banner?
Right.
Okay. So that doesn't
and it's allowed 2 banners in a multi-tenant facility. I had hoped to have Ernest here, because Ernest deals with this constantly, but he had a prior commitment. He'll be here at the next meeting. We plan on bringing this back for discussion and direction one more time, and then bring it back in the latter part of June, early part of July for action.
So that won't change for businesses? Yeah,
he said the big problem they have there is keeping track of which businesses are trying to do it at one time, and it's the old expression that we've used before, herding cats. But we're just trying to come up with keeping it basically like it is, but just simplify it.
And I know at one point in time we discussed how many banners could be placed at the Bandera Leslie Road intersection, and I thought the discussion was 2, if I remember correctly, but I was trying to remember, did we say 1 or 2?
Well, it depends. On one property, those are all, at this point, single-tenant tracks, so it would just be one banner.
Per
track.
location at that, at the
And
intersection.
what's happened is the property owners are giving their approval or authorization, but the banners wind up being installed in the TxDOT right-of-way. And they can't do that without a special TxDOT permit from the area engineer.
And then I guess one of the things for clarification, and it has to deal with, you know, the 3 times per year, 1 per quarter. Can we set the quarters from January to April and then every 3 months after that?
Yeah,
For clarification? Or are we gonna start from when they get the permit and then they go 3 months and that's their quarter?
Typically, we do a calendar year, and then the first quarter would be January, February, and March. We could specify that in here.
Okay.
That's a good point.
I thought maybe with that clarification, then they would know, you know, if they were getting a sign permit in February, they know that that's first
Yeah.
quarter. Okay. Let's see. I did like the size limit with no exceptions. I thought that was well stated because that prevents a lot of enforcement and measuring and less work for everybody involved. So those are the only couple things that I had. Thank you.
Okay. Jim?
Just a couple of items. As far as the duration, I was wondering if we would consider having the duration be at the start of an event and no more than 24 hours after an event concludes, rather than having 30 days or 60 days or whatever to sit down and to try to create a situation where the signs come down. I spoke with one of the property owners today, and one of their problems is multiple people wanting to put banners up on their property, and they run into a situation both with permitting and just blocking their own signs. If we limited the time that the banners were up to the time of the event, or 5 days before to the day after, something like that, it would create more room for other people to put banners up if we thought they were approvable.
Right.
One comment that I had,
Well, did you say it should start at the beginning date and,
no, I misspoke.
before, you
that.
said 5 or so days ahead?
5 or so days ahead of time, but the one I'm zeroing in on is no more than 24 hours after the end of the event. And second part of that would be consideration of some sort of a penalty if you go 2 or 3 times and don't get your signs down, that would require that you might not be permittable for X period of time, just to try to get people to stop being lazy about it.
Yeah, and the existing banner section states that it needs to be down. It says 24 hours after the expiration of the permit. Then what I found out in going back and researching the permits is some of our permits are issued 2 and 3 days after that end date.
That's what I'm seeing.
So with this proposal, the permit would end on the final day of the event, and then they would have 24 hours to take it down.
Okay. Again, talking with one of the property owners, I wonder about the being so general on the size. The square footage is absolute, but the interest was by the property owner that we stay with horizontal banners at least on their property, and not do something that would block their own signs. And I wonder about that, if that's something we might consider including. I know in some cases, people like the vertical banners, and they attract your attention, but whether or not we want to consider that, it was a second item. Going over on the size, and again, I'm not trying to be draconian here on my first night, but I think if something goes over on the size, it ought to be taken down immediately by code enforcement, rather than just saying, well, okay, next time, don't do it. By this time, we ought to know what 64 square feet is. So that was my other comment. And then on the application, having some sort of a picture or a rendering of what the banner was going to look like, or is to look like, to give the code enforcement a little better idea about what they're looking forward to expect. Those are my comments, Mayor.
Okay, thanks. And actually, on the application as it is now, it states that the text is supposed to be shown, but I see a lot of the applications, they don't do that. They just put the size. We had one recent application where they put the size of the banner was going to be 4 by 16 and had code enforcement go measure it, and it was 4 by 18. So instead of 64, it was 72 square feet. But as far as the height, getting back to that, there's something in here, I think it was 12 feet, which I thought was too high. And I was going to recommend at the next meeting, I wanted to get discussion going here, but just the maximum height that it could be displayed would be either 5 or 6 feet. That way they'd have a 4-foot banner, a foot or two off the ground, and still be able to have their 64 with a horizontal run instead of a vertical run. That was my thinking.
I guess I did have one other, and I would endorse the idea about the calendar quarters, and just saying, so it's fixed where code enforcement could understand what they're looking for, what they're not looking for. But that's the timing of the application, but again, the duration of the actual banner would not be for 30 days. It would be for the 5 days in advance to 24 hours after, whether that be 7 days or something else.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I had put in here recommended 10 days, because what we see is after a banner's been up more than 7 to 10 days, it starts drooping, and most of the time the organization doesn't come back out and fix it. And especially the 30 days, and like you had commented, the 30 days pretty well takes a corner for a long time, and so it precludes somebody else from being able to use it. So that 10 days, and I think it's a general rule that once you see a banner, you begin not to see it after a certain number of days, and new people may notice it, but it gets old after a while.
That was it.
Okay, Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's quite a few issues that are brought up in the paperwork that we received for tonight, and I realize it's obviously just a discussion and direction. I'm not sure, I mean, I know we can have discussion. I haven't heard a lot of direction just yet, more questions and thoughts, and so in keeping with that, I'll stick with some of the discussion and not yet the direction, since apparently we're coming back without a reworded version on the next month, and we can...
Well, yeah, but we'll be coming around a second time tonight and hopefully spark some ideas and really what you agree with here and what you'd like to see done differently. Because my intent was just, I spent a lot of time on this particular section and putting the ideas down, and this is after talking to Development Services and to Dustin Bosky, our code enforcement officer, of the problems they have and trying to put it into some language. So we're hoping to get some real guidance from you guys.
So I have several areas that I wanted to kind of address. They're already in this process. First, I find myself on the flip side of where I normally am in wanting to restrict signs more than anybody else on the council, and sometimes walking out of here dejected. But I think that the first issue we have to address is possibly separate the two categories of on-premise versus off-premise.
Right.
Because that seems to be what a lot of the effort involved in the paperwork we've received is the signs that really are off-premise signs. And I guess we have to get past the idea of whether we are or aren't going to allow off-premise signs, off-premise banners, because we don't allow off-premise signs in the city. And if a banner is a sign, then this becomes an exception to that rule. And so we have to address the issue of whether, one, we are or aren't going to allow that. The second issue has to do with, you know, when you have an on-premise sign, you know that it's going to be the occupant, whether it's tenant or owner, of that particular location. So having one makes sense if it's a single tenant. Having two makes sense if it's a multi-tenant, and limiting it to two avoids the clutter, which is my usual argument about too many signs in the city. It avoids the look of clutter, the blocking of everything else. And so, but when we start to go down the road of off-premise signs, then I agree with Paul. At some point in the past, we said that two was acceptable. Well, we never did, and I don't think our code ever talks about which one gets precedent, right? So if the bank, we talk about them because that's where they predominantly are located, if Broadway Bank wants to have a banner of their own, then we allow one more or two more or not. We have to make sure that our code regulates that part, assuming we continue even allowing an off-premise sign. The second question then becomes the type of event, and here you've mentioned special versus recurring, and we all know that not all special events recur, and not all recurring events are unspecial or whatever, and so it can go both ways. But my first thought, I mean, is the type of event we have is either one of two things. Most businesses put up a banner for a sale or that kind of activity, business-related activity. So again, the bulk of this is really not talking about sales. It's talking about events, meaning, and you've seen all of the paperwork here. So we have to, are we going to designate something specific to a business activity? And I guess maybe that becomes the difference. I mean, does a business get a right to have an off-premise sign, or is it, I was hoping Rick was going to be here, and without him, Ernest, can anybody else recall, have we ever had a business that's not a nonprofit have an off-premise sign over at Broadway?
Very few.
I can't recall one, but
What she said yesterday when I talked to her, today when I talked to her, was that they had very, very few, that
Yeah.
almost all were nonprofit.
yeah, and so then we have to say and a lot of them occur right in that immediate area. And the reason they go for that corner is simply because that is about the only place you can see their sign. And it's not just unique to Casa Helotes, it could be any number of events. You saw paperwork in here from an Eastern Star chapter that's down 1560. And a lot of those events, let's face it, are events that occur, not necessarily run by, but occur at the Festival Association grounds. And so if we stop that, then we have to realize that we're going to stop those too. And I think that was the other provision that that was on page 4 of 6, the section A10 that talked about the special provision for allowing 2 banners for unique special events. And as I recall in a discussion with our city administrator, that's Cornyball. Okay, and that's why it was allowed to be larger, and that's why allowed 2, et cetera. So if we're going to, as the recommendation, eliminate that, we have to understand that that's going to be part of it, and the same would occur with off-premise signage, et cetera. So I think that, you know, I'm not giving direction right now either, but just making the comment that we have to be considerate of those events that are related specifically to a nonprofit as opposed to a for-profit business, you know. And there were mention of other banners for for-profit as well. The location, I don't have any question with the recommendation to say on private property versus right-of-way, although there are multiple rights-of-way across private property. And so I don't know whether we need to designate whether you cannot block a right-of-way that runs across private property, such as utility, water, drainage, et cetera, because those are rights-of-way. And if we eliminate, and I know this is talking about permitting them in the right-of-way, but we might want to look at whether or not we can restrict them from blocking a right-of-way, even if it is on private property. I completely concur that it shouldn't matter whether it's perpendicular, parallel, or any other oblique angle to the property line. And I don't know what you do if it's curved property line, because then you can't do whatever. I didn't like geometry that much. But the orientation shouldn't matter. I completely agree that the height should matter. 12 feet's way too high. But I would imagine that most of the businesses permit an off-premise sign are not going to want it to block their own signage. An on-premise sign they control. So they're probably not really worried about that. If it's their own business, then they're going to control how high that goes and not block it. The 64 square feet portion of it, I think, is completely reasonable. I don't have any question with regard to that. I find it a little bit hard to have in our ordinance something that says no exceptions when we have the procedure for a variance, which is exactly that, an exception. And we have seen lots of ordinances that dictate the size of banners, the location of banners and signage. And if we were to put in there no exceptions, I don't know how that would hold up and whether or not that means we wouldn't be able to do a variance. So that no exception part sounds good. I'm just not quite sure how well it'll be enforceable. And I would think we would need to pay closer attention to that.
Would that work better if it said no exceptions without a variance?
Well, the only way you could get an exception is a variance, so why even bother to put it in there?
Okay.
Yeah,
Because if you just designate that 64 square feet is the size,
Got it.
then they have no choice but to go for variance if they want something bigger.
Yeah, Ernest had brought that up because later, under the variance section, I don't have the exact number, but it does say council can grant any variance, so we would have to change the language in that also.
I know that we had been working, and here's the portion that I would, unless you want me to hold off on the direction part.
No,
Okay.
that's what we're after.
As contrary to my normal stance, I would say that we need to allow off-premise banners of this type for events. And in the previous discussion we've had this year with regard to the banner revision, we have included the fact that intersection was the only intersection or area in town that would be permitted. We all discussed that. We never saw a final draft, but we did discuss that. We also talked about whether, I brought up the point about whether it should be on one or more of the corners. And even though we only have them currently, in the past prior to that date, only had them on the one corner by Broadway because the other three corners really didn't permit it. The owners didn't permit it. We need to, I think, designate that. Although it was later brought to my attention that we really can't tell a business they have to have it. They can always say no, so we're not in a position of saying that. But I think we should allow it. I would truthfully say we should allow it for a nonprofit. I'm not so sure I would agree with that for a commercial business to have an off-premise banner, like we don't have commercial or entities have off-premise signage in the city. I think that the size requirement is appropriate. The height should be limited to no more than, really, I think 6 feet might be even too high because most of these banners are only 3.5, maybe 4 feet tall, and I don't see any reason why they should be elevated off the ground. So I think we could go lower than 6 feet. That shouldn't hinder anybody's ability to see it based on where we place
Well,
them.
you see, some of the pictures show them on T-posts,
Yes.
and they'll be 12 to 15, 18 inches off the ground to the bottom. So that's why I was figuring 5 to 6 feet is what would be a nice height. So
I
it's
think
up to
we
you
need to,
guys.
I do believe that we need to be more clear in our ordinance, although I think it might be clear, but we need to be more clear that the businesses are indeed responsible for regulating what banners might be put on their property. Because as we've seen, the letters of permission all say, we're not responsible, when our ordinance says that they're responsible. So we have to be more clear about that, because then that puts the burden on our staff instead of on the property owner. And sometimes that may mean they're gonna say no, but that's their right as a business and a property owner to do so. There was one more thing I want to say, but I can't remember it now, so we'll pass it on to the next person.
Bert?
Okay. I'm just going to go through these 6 pages. I like the second option that says, I'm going to page 1 here. Your second option is not to define the top event as either special or recurring, but instead just stipulate that any event sponsored by an individual business organization is required to have a permit and be limited to only one banner permit each calendar quarter. Okay, I'm trying to keep my council hat on right now, but as you know, I'm pretty involved with Carnival. And we've been doing this since, the Carnival's been out there since at least, I think, 1995, 1996, and we've always had a banner up at that corner. The location we're talking about is Bandera, Leslie Hausman intersection. And we had, like Alex said, that is a location that is probably the prime location and probably the only location that we can put up those types of banners. It's close enough to the events like Casa and the Carnival grounds. I think we need to, but we also put up a banner because the ordinance allowed us to. We also put one up in the fence over there at TT Plumbing. I don't know if anybody knew about that. Maybe nobody sees it, but TT Plumbing, the fence over there.
at Beverly Hills.
Okay, I just,
Yeah.
sorry.
The same size banner. I'm trying to keep my council hat on, but I'm also trying to look like what Alex said about the nonprofits. They need to get their events out there. How else are they going to do it? I mean, how many cars go through that intersection every day? And it does help. Now, Jim said something about he would like to have it just for the time of the event. For Carnival, that just wouldn't work. It would not work.
No, I said 5 days before till the.
Okay, I
day
thought
after
you
the-
said just during the event.
I
Okay.
corrected that.
In the mayor's deal here, he's saying the maximum of 10 days and specifically stating the time is not cumulative. Are you saying 10 days prior to the event?
No, 10 days total run.
Including the event. Well, I would like to see that increased to 14 days, and that would include the event. You're saying in here too that your staff has been harassed and verbally abused and all that. Well, I hate to tell you this, it's still gonna happen.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
We're
there's
just
no
trying
way to.
lessen it.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's still gonna happen. That's just the nature of the beast. I still like what Alex said about, we have to think about our nonprofits. Our nonprofits are something that I don't know if we should make that a special event, or some type of deal that we can give them some kind of special consideration. I don't know how we would do it. Like we said earlier, it's herding cats, but somehow to give the nonprofits some kind of special consideration. I like the 64 square feet per banner. I wanted to say something about, I do agree with that, with not putting any of the banners in a right-of-way. That should not happen. As a matter of fact, it's illegal unless you get the permit from TxDOT, and I don't think they give those out very often. But if you're gonna follow the deal at the Broadway Bank, especially, their property line starts behind that sidewalk. And I put up probably, I don't know how many banners I put up there. If you're gonna put up banners behind that sidewalk, you're not gonna miss, they have all their irrigation system back there. Their sprinkler systems back there. There's no way you could put T-posts in the ground there. So essentially, moving it out of the right-of-way, you're not gonna be able to put up a banner sign there. There's no way. There's not enough room. There's only very little room to put T-posts in the ground. So possibly what we need to do, if we allow it, is go talk to the people at Broadway and say, hey, look, is there a way we can put some type of permanent thing in there? I think Jim and I had said something about, we had talked about this a little bit, and he was saying something about maybe something permanent in the ground that you can put things in, and when you take them out, it's ground level, can't see it anymore. That way we get past the sprinkler system problem over there. And then another thing, what was I going to say about first? Okay, if you're going to limit it to one banner per entity, especially at that corner, so what do? Doors open at 8. What do you got to do? Be in line at 6 o'clock in the morning? It's first come, first serve, isn't it? Mm-hmm. How are you going to regulate that? And most of our events, I hate to say this, well, no, I don't hate to say this, they happen in the spring. Most of the events are one after another in the springtime because the weather's good. So we have to consider all this. To me, we should at least allow a couple of banners in that section. Maybe we should limit it to March through June, something like that, and then dial it back to one. I don't know. This is, like you're saying, herding cats, but we're trying to herd the cats. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, all our events, to me, are at the same time in Helotes. So, okay, and let me see one other thing. And then the part about prohibiting all off-premises banners, no, I could never agree to that. So that's all I have for right now. That's all that's popped into my head right now.
Okay, just a couple of things. What I had in mind and was going to bring next time, because I wanted to see how this goes this time, is any event would be, we could specify, a special sale that a business has, a grand opening, like Burger King had. They're now open or whatever for business, regardless of whether it's a nonprofit or a business. The thing that has always bothered me is that it seems like everybody's all in favor of exempting nonprofits from everything, but we make businesses who have employees and rents to pay and insurance and utilities, and they have to sell their product or provide their service. We seem to to put a heavy hand on businesses, but we seem to look at nonprofits as, gee, we'll just let them do carte blanche, whatever they want to do. And that's always bothered me. So hopefully when we finish this, it's going to be equal, whether it's a private business. If they want to have an off-premises banner, they should have just as much of a right for a special announcement that they want to make about their business as a nonprofit does. So the end goal in my mind is to have something that's equal for everybody. It's going to let the nonprofits do their events. And one thing that I had in mind is the banner flags, which we'll, I'm sure, talk about before this is all over. You see them everywhere. Cornwall has them, HEB's big banner flags. Allowing those kinds of things to occur during an event for the duration of the event, say 5 days or the term of the event, whichever is less. Cornwall's event is the longest event that we have, and that's about 4 days, I think. And so that's something to consider. So we got a long way to go on this. This is good so far. So you're done?
Yes, sir.
Paul, any follow-up?
My thought, going back to Jim's comment on days, I like the 10 days. I think 5 is a little too less. I mean, you might have people coming through here on an irregular basis, so I thought the 10 might be a good, and then Bert had mentioned 14 days.
Well, Bert's including the term of the event, so he's saying 10 days.
10 days prior to the event.
10 days prior to the event, and then
during the event.
whatever the event duration is, that would be tacked onto
Okay.
the 10 days.
I think that's fair.
So,
That's all
I mean,
right.
so you want to word this then, so Susan and Selena can take the notes, hopefully better than I'm taking. But whatever the duration of the event, we would say limit that to a 5-day maximum event, and then allow the banner 10 days before that for a total of 15 days rather than 14, something like that? Okay.
Okay with that.
Okay with that? Okay. And we would stipulate in here, they could put it up 10 days before, but then if it's a 3-day event, it would be a 13-day banner. If it's a 4-day, 14, it could
Still
go.
come down within 24 hours of the
Yes.
event.
Isn't that going to create more headaches for Ernest and Belinda?
No, it's just putting that end date.
Okay.
I think that should work out fine. That it?
And I'm good with the 4 to 5 feet on height.
Okay.
I think that's-
Most of them are in the range of 4 feet by 16 or less. Some come in 3 feet.
Can I say?
Yeah, well,
Oh, I'm
let
sorry.
me get back to you. Jim?
Well, I was going to suggest that maybe we be more definitive and say the banners will be 4 feet by 16 feet, because if you get too much smaller than that, you can't read it anyhow. And I wonder about having it be smaller, but that's just a personal thing. Trying to learn on the fly here, so bear with me on several of the things that came up that I agree with, but I think we could eliminate a lot of pages on our banner section if we just simplify the definition that you were talking about, and that is to eliminate the whole term of recurring and put things into one of 2 categories, or create 2 new categories. But I don't know why recurring is necessary to move forward if we have a specified time, and each time you want an event, you have to come in and make an application for it. It seems to fly in the face of having a maximum number if you can have a recurring, something that happens every other week,
Right.
to use the extreme. I totally concur with the 6-foot maximum, maybe even less, on the banner height. I wonder, I can't really give any direction because I have too much to learn yet on that, but how do we limit that to the only intersection? I mean, as other intersections grow into the city, how do we limit and say this is a special intersection? It is by traffic count, but how do we tell somebody else on another intersection that if they want to put up a banner sign that they can't because this is our only, so I don't know how we enforce that in the future. If I were voting today, I would vote to have them be, the off-site banners be concentrate on the nonprofits at this intersection that we're trying to, that I'm saying we can't enforce, but as far as off-sites for a sale, like a Burger King or somebody saying that they're going to have a special sale, I don't know how that would be off-site. It would seem like they could be on their property.
Yeah, those to me would be on property.
Right.
I can't think of an instance where they'd want one off-site unless they're having, say, a barbecue cook-off or something, and they'd want to.
And then how do you choose between Burger King and McDonald's and KFC?
Exactly.
And so I would say that not having, those locations being limited to nonprofits. Having spoken with one of the property owners, I do know they're nervous about trying to enforce the signs, the banners, and that they're looking to the city for that enforcement. So we need to wrestle with that one and counsel all of them, because they're not real happy about saying that they're going to measure, that they're going to look at whether they're in compliance or not.
No, as I put in here, it's inappropriate for us to put that burden on a property owner. However, they should be aware of how many approvals they give, and if they can only give one at a time, they should be able to keep track of that for a particular deal, and then we'll also do that also.
The banner flags, I think, is an issue that we're going to have to explore in a lot greater detail, but they are the new thing, and everyone wants to have them up, and they are the attention. I mean, at least they're not waving Tin Man kind of things that have been put up in past years. The hot rail that I would at least like for future discussion to take a look at would be if the fairgrounds should have its own set of regulations. And that should be something that we at least take a look at for signage and how we're moving forward, because it is an annual event for, 12 years now, ongoing? I mean, it's not, math is wrong. Since 1995, anyhow.
Well, it actually started 50-something years ago
Well,
in Old Town, but anyway,
the
yes.
modern
It's
site.
been part of Helotes for a long, long time.
Well, what I'm getting at, Bert, is that on-site versus off-site, designating that particular area is an item that I'd like to be brought up for discussion, that particular area could have a subsection set of rules, if that's even possible.
Well, again, a thought that I had, and I really, it bothers me all the time to have an exception like that for one particular organization when you don't know what other organizations might want to do the same thing. That's why I was saying they could have banner flags, banners during their event, and that's why I picked the 5 days or the length of the event, whichever is less, and then we'd come up with a certain number of banner flags, 4 per 100 lineal feet or something like that. Something specific to where if another nonprofit had a piece of property and had an event, they too would be able to use banner flags. It shouldn't be singled out whether it's the Festival Association or anybody else, even though their event's the biggest event we have. You try and want to, I mean, what's the next nonprofit going to say if you're allowing them to just do whatever they want?
As Alex said, this is non-directional. It's called, let's bring it up for discussion and either shoot it down or
Exactly.
or go from there. So
Yeah.
that was it.
Okay. Alex?
Thank you. First, when you said 10 days plus the event, I was thinking of, although we don't have any dealerships, I was thinking sometimes they have truck month. Well, no, because that becomes 5 days plus a month, but you said no more than a 5-day event, and
Well, that was my suggestion. You guys will make the ultimate decision.
and I think that may only apply to the off-premise signage,
Yes.
because the on-premise signage, I
Well-
think, would have to have different regulations.
No, that would be on premises.
Yes.
Because they have a lot of banner flags by HEB down Leslie Road and down their driveway. And so we should be able to wind up with something that allows all of that, as long as it doesn't exceed, say, 5 days or the term of the event, whichever's less.
I was referring to the off-premise banner, the one single banner that we would permit off-premise, not, I'm not in favor of the little flag wavy things, so not at all. So I may get outruled on that one, but I'm not in favor of those on or off-premise, because I think that it goes right back to the congestion and the constant distraction that we didn't move here for. But
That would be strictly, in my mind, on premises during the event only.
Oh, I understand that. I'm
Yeah.
still opposed to it.
Okay.
So, I think though the question we're gonna have to also address is whether or not by this, we have some impact on any organization that chooses to have an event closer together than once a quarter. And I'm not gonna say monthly, but you could see that an organization at the festival grounds, at Casa Helotes, at some other, anywhere on or off-premise scenario, decides to have an event more frequently than 3 months apart. And I think we're gonna have to address, that doesn't mean that they're any less special or any less, and I know I agree, we probably eliminate the word special versus regular versus whatever, but we do have nonprofits and others that want to have banners on a more frequent basis than once a quarter, and I think we have to address that, and we have to deal with that in this revision that we're discussing. Maybe we should also include something about the support structure that it sits upon. I'm not quite sure I want to say that they should all be 4x16 because you have a lot of businesses and/or organizations that may not want to pay for a banner that size, and by dictating that size, we could put them into an expense that they may not want to do. And I think, as others have said, I think we need to be very careful about showing or implying favoritism of one business or another, or one organization or another, because that could get us into having variance requests that they point to other things. In your paper that you presented to us, you indicated the whole idea of precedent, and I think that is a big thing that we have to be concerned with when we grant variances, because I do know that not only do the individuals who come to the city, but also the council members will say, well, we did it before, how can we tell them no? And we've also had, at this very last meeting, we had comments made, well, we steered them wrong, therefore we have to stand by it, which is completely counter to what we've done in the multitude of papers that we've received for tonight's meeting. So I think we just have to be very careful how we word a lot of this to avoid that kind of impression. Thank you.
And I really don't know of any nonprofit that generally comes in wanting something more than once a quarter. Most of them are annual events like Carnival, the Highland Games, the what's the bull bus?
Blowout. Any Baby Can.
Bull blowout. Any Baby Can. Those are more annual events, and so that's more typical. The Casa Spaghetti Dinner, the Masonic or Lions chicken and dumpling thing. Those generally occur just once a year. Bert, anything else? Did you want to say anything else?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bert, did you? No.
Okay. I like the idea of putting the permit in the top right-hand corner on the front. Much easier for code compliance to see. And then as far as the height, I think we should keep it at at least at 6 foot, because in my experience of putting up banners, you have to allow the air to go up underneath it also. Because you put it on the ground, it catches too much wind, and it's going to rip it apart. Might also want to put something in there about if the banner needs to be repaired within 24 hours if it gets shredded, because I've seen that a lot where it just comes apart. You get a norther go through here or whatever, it tears the sign up pretty good. I might want to think about putting something like that in there. I'm just kind of torn too, though. I know we have to have rules. I understand that, but I guarantee you we've had no complaints from any citizen. Well, I'm not going to guarantee it. Maybe we have. But in my mind, we've had no complaints from citizens, have no complaints for any other merchants about these signs, especially at the corner at Hausman and Bandera, Leslie Road over there. And I know we have to have rules, but we're not receiving any grief from anybody. So I think we need to be very careful about over-regulating this. It's my point. That's all I've got.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do, because you could say that about just about any sign that comes here needing a variance, is no one was complaining about it. People drive by it every day, but yet there is an ordinance.
Yes, sir.
That
I know, I said that, there is rules.
Council's passed, so you have to comply with it or else not have it at all. And so that's what brings us to this point. Paul, back to you one more time.
I don't think I have anything else.
Okay. Jim, one more round?
Nope.
Alex?
Not this month.
Okay.
No, sir.
Nothing?
No, sir.
Okay, well, Selena and Susan, I'm sure, took copious notes, and I did too, to some extent. And we appreciate the input. What we'll try and do is for next time, bring this back and maybe have a proposed new section 6644A to look at and actually get into the nuts and bolts of it, maybe a little deeper, hopefully. And our ultimate goal, of course, is to make it fair for everybody, give everybody a chance to advertise their events in a fair and equitable manner, and really, hopefully help the staff. And Ernest will be here next time so he can have some input, because he pretty well knows all of these codes front and back. And he can give us some insight that we may not have.
So are we just gonna be, it's gonna be just the banners again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. With that, that is our last item. So we will look to adjourn. If there are no objections to adjourning this meeting, any objections? We're adjourned at 8:06.